What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Monday, November 25th, 2024 edition of the Daily Energy Newsbeat Stand-Up. Here are today's top headlines. First up, Europe is already facing its next energy crisis. Next up, half of the U.S. at risk for blackouts during extreme cold this winter, according to Grid Watchdog. Finally, in the news segment, California gas warfare heats up over exodus of oil companies. I will then jump in quickly, cover what happened with oil and gas prices, and opine a little bit about what might be coming in line. And then we will let you get out of here. Stu is out on assignment today, so I am rocking a solo show. Let's go ahead and kick us off. All right, so first one we've got here, Europe is already facing its next energy crisis. It's pretty unbelievable. If we all remember back in 2022, that was basically the first winter of the Ukraine conflict to where things got really spicy in Europe. And what's looking like is that things are going back to the same sort of 2022 shock. I'll go ahead and start reading straight from the article here. The rapidly depleting gas reserves and looming upcoming supply cuts from Russia have the makings of a fresh energy crisis in Europe, which is still reeling from the aforementioned price shock that we did see 2 years ago. Already what we've seen with these escalating tensions in Ukraine, they've contributed to about a 45% surge in gas prices this year. And even though that's still far below the records that we're seeing over in 2022, we're getting now to the point where the risks of them getting back closer and closer to those levels, as we haven't even got into really the heart of the winter, is putting pressure on regulators, consumers, and most importantly, the people, again, that use this gas every day. I want to go ahead and throw this first chart up here. European gas inventories are getting quickly depleted. If you're watching us on YouTube, which I highly recommend, by the way, what you'll see is that normally over the last, I would say, basically for the last year or so, basically since January of 2024, the gas storage levels have been above their 5-year average. But as you've seen recently, basically starting at the end of October, early November, it's actually begun to plunge at a steeper rate relative to the 5-year average and is now crossed below the 5-year average. If you're listening to us on Blurberry or podcast, excuse me, I mean, it's got all the makings of spicy. Remember, basically Russia has announced that they are going to basically roll back gas going into Europe. Europe has done nothing to diversify their gas. It's got all the makings of another spicy winter. And I don't say that in a good way, because European consumers are about to get hit. Let's throw this second chart up here. Europe braces for expensive gas in summer. I mean, look at those spreads that are being forecasted from basically the summer 2025, winter 2025 natural gas spread. You're over 4 cents, or in this case, euros per megawatt hour. Holy smokes, guys. I mean, it's going to get crazy. It always comes back to, guys, diversify in everything we do. We talk about investing in oil and gas. Why? Diversify your portfolio. When you're talking about anything in life, if you're a business and you have revenues, diversify your revenues as much as you can, because if not, if you're too dependent on one, when that goes away, guess what? All of a sudden things begin to crumble. So when you're solely reliant on Russian gas, this is what gets you into situations like that. It's not looking good. Luckily, what happened in the winter of 2022 is Europe was able to avoid these shortages thanks in part to a milder weather. The problem is, as we'll notice in another article, this winter's looking a little bit colder, and the rate of drawdown of the gas storage is more. So it's going to be crazy. Obviously, LNG imports are going to be a thing. We're already seeing natural gas prices rise a little bit. It'll, again, if you're in Europe, keep your shoes, keep your clothes, stock up on what you can, because it's going to get cold. Let's move to the next one. Half of the U.S. at risk for blackouts during extreme cold this winter, according to Grid Watchdog. I mean, guys, it's going to be cold here too. A new report out by the North American Electric Reliability Council, known as NERC, has basically, they're in charge of assessing the United States and Canada's grid reliability, has basically released a report calling the the 2024-2025 winter reliability assessment has some very crazy stuff. The report warns, here's a quote, electricity supplies are at risk from freezing temperatures that threaten reliable operation of bulk power systems known as BPS generators, fuel supply issues for natural gas power generation, and wind and solar energy resource limitations. Pretty unbelievable. And one of the reasons why they're so worried about specifically the grid this winter is going back to what I talked about, what's happened to be in Europe. It's not just going to be cold in Europe. The EIA is forecasting a colder winter than this year, which is also going to strain not only renewables, but also some of the natural gas-fired power generation. Quote from the report, natural gas-fired power generator availability and output can be threatened when natural gas supplies are insufficient or when flow of fuel is unable to be maintained. It's really that second part, the flow of fuel unable to be maintained is most likely going to unfortunately be the issue. And that really hits to the point of where you're reliant on a single source. That's the problem with the grid. It's solely sourced with a few different things. We've obviously attempted to diversify away, but I mean, if you just have one coal plant in your town, that does get a little spicy. If you're just reliant on wind or solar, it could get even worse. The Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, known as MISO, that's one of the kind of electrical reasons. It covers 15 states across the Midwest and northern Great Plains and a little bit of South Central U.S., has actually reduced its coal and natural gas-fired generation by 5 gigawatts since last year. And they specifically point that out, NERC does, because that's going to create problems when all of your other systems can't come up. You've reduced it in favor of these other types of electricity generation, aka wind and solar, which are going to struggle just as much, if not more, in this crazy weather. To give you guys an idea, the average American home consumes about 900,000 watt hours per month. And, because it's sort of it's a sinusoidal wave, which means you use a lot more energy in the mornings and at night than you do during the day because you're gone. But to give you an idea, 5 gigawatts of electricity generation running for 1 hour could power 50 million 100-watt light bulbs for 1 hour. So, I mean, that's how much we've taken offline now. We've taken off 50 million light bulbs for 1 hour by just artificially reducing this stuff. It's pretty unbelievable. Some of the natural gas, specifically the Natural Gas Supply Association, which is a natural gas lobby, has come out and said some of the natural gas reliability stuff is a little bit overblown. I would tend to agree on that side of it. I mean, it's in NERC's interest to just say the grid sucks. We need more funding. They're a lobbying group on the grid side. It's on the natural gas lobbying side. It's in their best interest to say, it's not that bad. The answer obviously is somewhere in the middle. The big issue is that we've taken off intermittent electricity, aka natural gas and coal, in favor of renewables, which are going to do way worse in the winter. And it's not going to look good because it could be chilly. So get your coats, guys. Watch out. It comes back to what I'm saying. We need to make sure that we have a sufficient grid. It doesn't matter if we have ample supply. We have got ample supply here in the United States. The problem is the grid sucks. And, I cut this story from the lineup talking about some of the energy secretary nominees, specifically Chris Wright, Doug Burgum of Interior, and the head of the EPA. One of the things they're going to need to dive into is grid reliability regardless. So pretty fascinating, guys. Get your winter coats. It's going to be cold. Finally, California's gas warfare heats up over exodus of oil companies. I mean, this is pretty funny, guys. So if you don't remember, about a month and a half ago, a friend of the show, Oil Slick himself, Governor Gavin Newsom, signed Assembly Bill X2-1. This grants the state the power to, quote, require oil refiners to maintain a minimum inventory of fuel to avoid supply shortages. It's also designed to, quote, limit, quote, higher profits for the industry, and authorizes whatever this bureaucracy they're creating is to force, quote, refiners to plan for resupply during refiner maintenance. Basically, 2 days later, Phillips 66 announced it's shutting down the refinery, which has a facility in Carson and another 5 miles away in Wilmington that's linked by a pipeline. And they're doing that in the fourth quarter of 2025, so about a year from now. Both sites have been in operation for basically 100 years and have done about a million barrels of gasoline for Southern California motors. That's even according to the New Los Angeles Times, which is no friend of the oil business, I'll tell you that much. Phillips 66 believes that, quote, this is the long-term sustainability of the Los Angeles refinery is uncertain, which I love how this article says, which is a polite way to say that lawmakers are creating hostile business conditions that conventional energy companies to struggle under. To give you an idea, guys, that Phillips 66 has about 600 employees full-time, and about 300 contractors will be impacted. And obviously you're going to see, if you're living in Southern California, gas prices also shoot up tremendously. Phillips 66 has pledged to work with California to maintain current levels, to increase supplies to meet consumer needs. They will be out of there come 2025. So who knows that? It just goes to show you that when the free market is the best way to manage all this. Going back to the grid, if they're going to mess with the grid, and what I would recommend if somebody asked me, hey, Mike, what would you do to fix the grid? I would incentivize the free market to figure it out, because I know I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but I do know that the market will figure it out, because the market will always guide itself. I just got done listening to a great interview with the CEO of Uber talking about how they manage their prices. And guess what? On Uber, they don't manage their prices. Guess what? As the prices of Ubers rise on the marketplace, more drivers sign up because they see a profit to be made. And guess what? That increase of supply of drivers drives down the price, because now the supply reaches demand. Vice versa, when prices get too low, drivers drop off, raising the price, because now demand is higher than supply. The same thing can happen in the grid. If you can incentivize people to invest in the grid, and I don't know quite how to do this, because the problem is, the grid is somewhat monopolistic, is we don't need 7 different grids. We need one grid. You need one set of pipes running into your house. You don't need 7 different companies. So we do need a way to figure that out. But if I was on this energy council that they're creating, go Chris Wright, go Doug Burgum, I would figure out a way to do grid reliability and make the marketplace figure out how to fix the grid, because they will figure it out. And it's going to hurt you guys in California. If anybody are listening from California, you're about to be buying all of your oil from China. Ooh, I'm sure they produce it clean, much cleaner than, it's just unbelievable. I mean, we know it's super hard if you're an oil and gas company to do business in California. The Attorney General, Rob Bonta, has recently sued ExxonMobil over quote unquote plastic recycling messaging. Again, it's a scam. They're just trying to, look what we're doing. We're hard on oil and gas. Well, guess what? You're driving out energy and you're going to jack up prices. So you got what, if I was in California, your tax dollars are going, in my opinion, to some pretty ridiculous stuff. Let's go ahead and jump over into oil and gas finance. But before we do that, guys, as always, we need to pay the bills. Thank you for checking us out here on the world's greatest website, energynewsbeat.com. All the news and quote-unquote analysis you just heard is brought to you by that said website. You and the team do a tremendous job making sure that website stays up to speed. Everything you need to know to be the tip of the spear when it comes to the energy and the oil and gas business. Go ahead and hit that description below on podcast for all of links to the timestamps, links to the articles, and links to our Substack, www.theenergynewsbeat.substack.com. Go ahead and give us a subscribe there. Also, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, making a final push through the end of the year. We really appreciate you guys there. As always, guys, if you have a tax problem, chat, please. We have an offering, invest in oil, energynewsbeat.com. It's a great way. We'll show you how to reduce your tax burden by investing in oil and gas, make a little bit of dividend money, but also diversify your portfolio. And specifically, you can finally become Billy Bob Thornton in Landman. If you've been watching that show for the past 2 weeks and you want to become Billy Bob Thornton, I promise you the best way to do it is invest directly in oil and gas, get yourself some working interest, and you can also keenly lower your tax burden. That's the key, guys. Invest in oil.energynewsbeat.com. I mean, pretty crazy, guys. On Friday, S&P 500 was up about 0.3 percentage point. NASDAQ was up about 0.17 percentage points. 2 and 10-year yields both fell about 0.6 and 0.9 percentage points. Bitcoin had a, pretty flat week, $98,000. I mean, it's been on an absolute tear, guys. Pretty unbelievable. Crude oil is actually up about 1 percentage points on Friday, finished the day somewhere around 71.33. Currently, as I'm recording this, about 7 p.m. here on the 24th, prices have dropped to about 2 cents to 71.22. So excuse me, it was 71.24 which was the close. And we saw Brent oil was actually down, flat on Friday, and flat right now, currently sitting at about $75. Natural gas actually closed at about $3.10 $3.10, has since jumped 9 percentage points in about the hour and a half it's been open here, up to $3.41, basically re-upping with the front month contract as things roll over. Really reason for that 1 month or that 1% high on Friday, which was actually a 2-week high, was mainly what's going on in Ukraine right now, which basically is pricing in a little bit higher of a geopolitical risk as, we're launching, ICBMs are getting launched into Ukraine. Long-range missiles are being launched into Russia. It's just crazy, guys. They were up about, both benchmarks were actually up, as I said, about 6% over the whole week, which is absolutely pretty crazy. We also did see rig counts drop. Let me go ahead and pull them up real quick just so we can take a look at rig counts. I forgot to. Rig counts were down 1 on the week to 583. That's down 39. We can see we're closing that gap from last year, but still down 1 rig week over week. Canada was added 1 rig. Internationally, we added 3 rigs. So things are setting up. We're moved into Thanksgiving, so things are a little bit of quiet on the oil and gas front. I'm gearing up to do a few more deal spotlights, just getting my research in place. I think we're going to cover the Ovintiv Uinta for Montney swap. I think there's some really interesting stuff in there, just trying to line up some guests there. But guys, Stu will be doing a solo show tomorrow. We'll be back Wednesday in your ears for our last daily stand-up of the week. We're going to drop from the bank 2 interviews that Stu did on Thursday, Friday. You'll get a quick recap for the week on Saturday, and then we will be back in full effect for next week, guys. I appreciate you sticking with me here. For Stuart Turley, I'm Michael Tanner. We will see you guys tomorrow, folks.